Hello everyone, this is the Darren according to the wiki. Anyways, after finishing up every single possible monster in Monster Hunter, not counting Leshen or Behemoth, because as far as I'm concerned, they're not part of this game. They suck so many balls. I think it would be quite poignant to create a sort of thoughts on video of every single monster, not counting the DLC one, not counting Leshen and Behemoth, because as I said, I don't like them. And more importantly, I don't think they're part of this game. Alright, starting with Great Jagras. I'm gonna be completely honest, this wasn't really something I remember ever existing, because it's the first large monster you fight, and as a introduction to what this game will be, it definitely could serve its job a bit better. Its fight is really basic, and even with the most rudimentary of equipment, its fight is over nearly instantly. It serves its purpose completely fine, and is the resonant punching bag of the ancient forest, so it has points for that, but aside from that, it's just sort of there. It just exists. Kulu-Ya-Ku has sort of similar problem to Great Jagras in that it just sort of exists. It doesn't really do anything special. I do, however, like the mechanic of it grabbing stuff out of the ground and using that as a weapon. I think that's a pretty unique aspect, and just as a little side note, I have no notes. This is just stuff I'm coming up with as I go along. But the only real thing about Kulu I distinctly remember is the Kulu-Ya-Ku from the mission you have to do before you get to fight Behemoth. That felt less like a fight and more like the game was insulting me. And the reason I say that is because it's a Kulu-Ya-Ku. And somehow, it was doing a stupid amount of damage to someone in a full set of Xeno'jiiva armor. Fully upgraded with armor spheres and everything. That felt so stupid to me, it wasn't even funny. And the music in the background as well, like, it was definitely memorable. That's definitely one way to make Kulu-Ya-Ku memorable, but at the same time, it is a really bad way, because it doesn't give good memories. It gives you shit memories. I don't like Kulu-Ya-Ku for that reason, because of that one fight. It is so stupid, and yeah. It serves its purpose as a second monster, has a unique gimmick. Just wish its harder version wasn't borderline infuriating. Pukei, the monster that showed me this game was gonna do some interesting things. Although, one thing I find really strange, why it's considered a bird wyvern. Like, why? Kulu I get, Pukei I really don't. This is a flying wyvern in every which way, but yeah, I quite like the fight. I especially like its color scheme and how it becomes more vibrant when it enters rage mode. And one thing I really is that it actually it's a pretty good introduction to poison, one of the more dangerous status effects, because it's able to inflict it both with its tongue while enraged and with projectiles. I quite like it. I just wish it was a little bit more difficult, maybe make the poison a bit more potent, but as a monster that really sort of shows you what this game's about, I quite like it. Barroth, the first monster in this game that is not an original. This came from some of the older games. Honestly, the only reason I remember it is because it appeared in one trailer for I think it was Freedom Unite. Was it Freedom Unite? I'll check, but it's only memorable to me for a few things. That trailer and the mud armor mechanic, because I find the mechanic interesting. I just wish it was kind of used a bit more, but at the same time, it's also a little bit annoying when you're trying to beat up down when you're trying to beat down the monster, and all of your attacks just deflect because mud. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's pretty stupid that mud of all things deflects metal or bone. I understand, but metal, bitch, that would not deflect. That would not deflect it IRL. I'm absolutely certain. And it's especially annoying. The problem gets mitigated by the time by mid game, because by that point you'll have weapons with blue or even white sharpness, so it makes it a lot easier. But still, it's a good early game monster, and it's a good early game challenge. Gerontodus, one of the Piscine trio, and it's not a good introduction. Because I'm not only has got an absolutely stupid name, seriously, Gerontodus. Come on, what the fuck am I supposed to do? How the hell do you say that? That's so stupid. Duran, how do you say it? Anyways, it's not a really fun fight because of the location you fight it in. You only fight it in one location in the Wildspire Waste. And if you don't farm Gadju materials, like I did, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember, like I said, long ass time ago, but unless you farm for Aqua Mobility, you are going to be moving at molasses speed against a monster that is surprisingly fast. Add to it Barrow's mud mechanic, and you have in your hands a challenge that is a challenge that can be either frustrating or infuriating depending on your skill level. It's not hard when you get, like I said, you get to mid game, but then again, none of the monsters in the Wildspire that you first fight are. Tobi Kadachi, the first monster I actually struggled with on my first time around because of its speed and how its fight works. I quite like this monster. Of the early game Ancient Forest monsters, it's probably my favorite in terms of design. I mean, flying squirrel with electric powers. That's just cool. It's fight that has a good sense of speed to it. Its attacks hit pretty hard, and it shows that Thunder Blight and Paralysis and that Thunder Blight is extremely deadly. I quite like it, and it's probably the main reason I've never, as soon as I was able to, I never left a single hunt without max level stun res. The stun res basically mitigates a lot of Tobi's fighting prowess. So yeah, if you're a new player and struggling with Tobi, either learn its attack pattern or stock up on stun resistance, if you can. Anjanath, the second monster I struggle with because it is surprisingly powerful. I like its design, but I'm a little bit concerned as to why it's considered a wyvern, because, well, it's a dinosaur. Like, that's straight up what it is. It's a dinosaur. I like its roar, especially, and I especially like the mechanic where, when it gets in rage mode, both its wings and nose thing, sprout up, making it look more intimidating. And I find it quite funny that one of its primary fire attacks is it literally just sneezing at you. Like, I just find that funny. Yeah, that's about it. It's quite good. One of its attacks is funny. Definitely is a challenge for early game hunters, but by the time you get good at the game, it becomes a bit of a pushover. Rathian, the second monster to poison you, and definitely a love or hate monster. I'm sort of in the middle of it, because I like its design, I like its roar, I respect it for being one of the earliest monsters ever created for the series, but its fight can be tedious at times. If you're able to take off the tail, you no longer have to worry about poison, but at the same time, she still has fire and her primary attacks being charging at you. It's not difficult once you understand her gimmick, but get boring really fast. Zitzi Yaku, the resident flashbanger of the Coral Highlands, I would probably make quite good friends with Cloaker. Honestly, not the biggest fan of it. It's definitely useful when it just shows up randomly, throws a flashbang at the other monster and walks away. Whenever that happens, it's funny, but because of the stage of the game I'm at, it's basically just you only hunt in the guiding lands and nothing else. That situation happens once every 5 blue moons. In terms of actual fight, if you can destroy its head, if you can break its head, its flashbang is basically pointless. That being said, it's definitely another monster to make sure you know how deadly stuns can be, because while it doesn't hit very hard, if you get caught in the flash, and don't recover quickly, you will be probably taking a hit. I quite like that. It shows you that you have to be careful of stuns. Palamulu, the Lilo and Stitch reject of the gang, and honestly, it's possibly one of the most unique fights in the game, because it's one of the few monsters that uses air in any way. The other one I'm pretty sure being its Iceborne variant. Yeah, it's quite an interesting fight. I just kind of wish it went on a little. I just kind of wish it was a bit more varied in its attacks, because all it really has is a charge, 360 spin, courtesy of pretty much every other flying wyvern, and a couple of attacks in the air. A gust of wind, butt slam, and a spin where it just kind of goes ape shit, starts 360ing everywhere and just charging at you that way. It's funny when that happens, but it gets old really quickly. Great Gyros, the least liked monster in the base world. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it other than the smaller Gyros have a higher chance of killing you than this thing does, because while you're focusing on it, the other Gyros or Vespoids will probably sneak up behind you and paralyze you, and you'll be stuck there. That being said, I do like its design. Snake Doggo? That's just a straight up cool idea. Just wish more was done with it. Radobang. Honestly, pretty cool fight, I'm gonna be honest. When I first saw it, and it saw just spinning around at the speed of sound down towards me, I was like, okay, you are probably gonna be an interesting fight. And you know what? It was. I quite like some of its attacks. Its 360 spins are fair and easy to dodge. And the one where it goes on, where it rolls up and goes along the ground like a tire. Well, not like a tire on the ground. Basically, it goes in a 360. It basically break dances at you, and I really like that. And I like that. Even if you get rid of the bone armor, that doesn't make the fight just one, because it can replenish them. I quite like that. Makes the fight consistently difficult, unlike some of the other early games where you take out one part and then your life just becomes so much easier. Legiana, another monster I struggled with my first time around because it flew everywhere. Gonna be honest, probably one of my favorite fights in base world because of the speed. Also definitely has the trophy for most ear-piercing roar in base world, only contended by Bazelgeuse, and that's only slightly. I'm gonna be honest, it definitely shows you how dangerous Ice Blight can be as well, because that increased stamina drain hurts. And can mean you end up don't having enough stamina to start to do multiple dodges. Odogaron, Clifford himself. I love this guy. I love the fight. I love the music that plays. Well, I know it's not exclusive to him, but God, it's so good. It definitely shows how dangerous. It definitely gives you a sense of how fast and dangerous the monster is. I love how it has a lot of breakable parts. I love its rage mode, how it just starts venting steam like a titan. Honestly, if this thing was larger, it could pass as a dog titan, and I quite like that. Yeah. I love him. He's really cool. Not the best doggo in the game, but definitely one of the best. Rathalos, the series poster boy himself, and one of the monsters that is either you love him or you despise him. I love him. That being said, definitely wish he didn't fly as often. You have to focus down on breaking the wings first in order to keep him on the ground, and when he's in the air, you're basically shit out of luck if you don't have a ranged weapon. However, that becomes a lot less painful thanks to Iceborne, where you get free wound attacks while he's in the air and easy knockdowns, because if you hit a flying monster with a flinch shot and they're not in rage mode, they basically automatically get sent down to the ground and they just get absolutely fucking demolished. It's very, very fun thanks to Iceborne. And even without it, still pretty good fight. Diabolos. Ugh. This was definitely one of the monsters I liked the least when I first played it, because I don't like monsters that basically only use one move the entire fight. And that's basically what Diabolos is. It's just constant charging at you, and then the occasional swing of the horns. That being said, sick design. I love him. I love the design. I just wish more was done with the fight again. Kirin, the first Elder Dragon on our list, and probably one of the least liked in the entire game. I don't feel hate towards it personally. I feel indifference to it, but I can definitely see why people do not like this guy. Because attacks are hard to locate. It's very fast because it's, you know, small and a bloody horse. But it does get points for one thing. This is one of the only Elder Dragons we see ever get hunted by something. The only Elder Dragon we ever see get hunted by something that isn't another Elder Dragon. Nurg, we'll get to you later. And I quite like that in order for Rajang, the monster that hunts it, in order to basically get its maturity, they have to sumo wrestle it down, grab its horn, and then eat it. I quite like that. Zoro Magdaros. Interesting design. Boring fight. So much more could have been done with it. I really could have. It's a fucking mountain. But all you do is shoot siege weapons at it. Like, come on. Talk about a goddamn letdown. Dodogama, the resident meme lord. Oh, how I love you. I mean, what is there to be said about Dodogama that hasn't already been said? It's cute. It's cute. If you hurt him, everyone in the game will try and murder you on the spot. Its roar is friggin' whales, and if you catch it sleeping, it's still chewing rocks in its sleep. That's just cute. I love him so much. Pink Rathian, the first subspecies on our list and the first monster in the first unique monster in high rank. I feel like this monster just sort of has Rathian's problems cranked up to 11. Because it uses the tail a lot more. If you cut off the tail, you make this fight even easier than base Rathian. But if you decide not to for some reason, the fight is definitely a lot more challenging, and it is a pretty good introduction to high rank. Basil Goose. My goddamn man. First invasion monster, and oh boy, I love him. I love his design, I love his music theme, I love the fact that he's basically a B-52 carpet bomber. I love the way his fights works. And I love an interesting detail. The reason he roars so much is because his scales are also activated by force, I guess. That's how to put it. So it not only roars because he's pissed off all the time, he also roars in order to trigger any nearby scales. I quite like that. But everyone remembers him for being an invasion monster. He can win fights for you entirely on his own, and people have done that before. I've never done it personally, but it's a really cool thing that you can. Devil motherfucking Joe. Oh boy. If there is one thing I am jealous about for people who have never played this game, they will never be able to I will never be able to get that first experience with Devil Joe ever again. When the first time I saw him was in the Elder's Recess after I just finished up on Azure Rathalos. We will get to him soon. And I saw him, he looked at me, basically gave me a look that said, yeah, I am your worst nightmare. And then walked away. Then I tried fighting him. He roared. His music began playing. I nearly shit myself and ran back to camp as fast as my legs could carry me. I love this guy. And I also feel really, really bad for him conceptually. Because he has such a high metabolism that he has to eat constantly in order to not starve to death. As someone with a high metabolism himself, I can definitely relate to that. It's also really fun watching him duking it out with Bazelgeuse. Just watching the two fight is amazing. The Vosioth. Oh, dear Lord in heaven. I do not like this guy at all. It uses a form of armor like Baroth and Gerontotus. Only this time it's hardened magma, something I can actually understand because that shit is hard. Oh dear Lord, the fight is atrocious. If you're fighting it in the Elder's Recess, in the areas he will spawn, he can dive into the ground and then snipe at you from the snipe at you. And if you're fighting him in the Elder's Recess, he can do basically the same. In the volcanic region of the Guiding Lands, he can do basically the same thing. It's not very fun, kind of atrocious actually. Uragaan, another monster that's from the older games, and also a monster I'm not particularly fond of. It's basically Radoban, but with explosions, and a lot tougher. Trying to get some materials off of him was so annoying, and trying to wound him at times can be really annoying. But that being said, I like that in his lair and in the area around it, he basically turns the area into a fucking skate ramp. Like he just starts jumping off the walls and running around really quickly. I love it. I love that. Just wish the fight was a little bit less annoying. Ah, fuck. Wrong button. Alright. Azure Rathalos. Probably the monster I hunted down the most in base world, because I quite like the fight and I quite like the armor. It stays airborne a lot more, but that means if you break its wings, you knock out a lot of its power. Make use of the Clutch Claw, knock him down, use the crystals on the Elder's Recess. That's not all I can say. It's quite fun, but also quite challenging, as a subspecies should be. Black fucking Diablos. Oh dear Lord, I do not like you. I didn't like base Diablos very much at a whole, but I would say, depending on my mood, I can outright despise this thing's existence. It goes into rage mode whenever it fucking wants, and if you're fighting in a group, it will just change aggro randomly for no discernible reason. It's not a lot of fun, but I like its design. It definitely is more intimidating. If the eyes were a bit bigger, so they had like red spotlights, it would look really cool, but as it is right now, it's great design, not great fight. Nergigante, the flagship himself. Oh dear Lord, I love this guy. All the other Elder Dragons generally wield an element of some kind. This guy just goes full Mike Tyson and punches people to death. Like, I love that. I love his main problem, I think, with him is that hitbox issues. Nerd has a shit ton of hitbox issues. It is beyond stupid as what some of the hitboxes on his attacks. Still very fun if you're able to get through it and if you know what will actually connect and what won't. But for new timers, it is definitely going to be a challenging fight, as an Elder Dragon bloody should be. Teostra. Of the first Elder Dragons you will fight, and gonna be honest, probably the strangest to me, because it's basically just a giant cat with wings. That's what it is. But I love its music and I love its fight, because I quite like fire as an element because it can do a lot of different things, and the way Teostra uses it is definitely cool. He uses it as an aura to protect himself, he uses it as a nuke, he uses it to like traps. He does a lot with it, and I quite like that. And I quite like as well in Master Rank when he gets himself a close range beam attack that he launches on the ground. It's like I don't know really how to describe it, but it basically just launches a fire beam at the ground. It does damage to you without triggering temporal. It means sticking close by to it can be a bit of a challenge. I don't really like, however, that its flame aura damages you even if you have a cool drink. Like, that's stupid. That makes sticking near him even harder. And if you're near him for too long, you will end up dying to his flame aura. He has that all the time in Master Rank, even when he's not enraged. It can be pretty tedious. Lunastra. It used to be Teostra but blue, but with World, they revamped the fight to something borderline masochistic. Oh dear lord. I don't feel a lot of hate towards Lunastra myself, but good lord, I can really see why. You flash pulled her. She will do a supernova that does a lot of chip damage. She gets enraged. She will do a supernova that does... She's basically Teostra but with a supernova that triggers whenever she fucking wants it to. It is stupid. Really stupid. Love the music, though. Love the music. If you're gonna fight Lunastra, fight her for the music and nothing else. Kushala Daora. Great design. Borderline bullshit fight. High rank, I don't have any trouble with it, but Master Rank, oh dear fucking lord. He spams tornadoes so much. But the difference between high rank and Master Rank is that Master Rank, all of your attacks will bounce off if you don't wound them. And if you are going for wounds, good fucking luck, because the wind aura will shove you off the minute you even think about it. The tornadoes are going to be constant, and it feels less like Kushala is fighting you, and more like it's trying to stall out the clock and win that way. It's not a lot of fun, but it's not insurmountable. That being said, definitely wish that he used tornadoes less often, because it is stupid. Vaal Hazak, the newest Elder Dragon, well, the first Elder Dragon that got into the game that's, well, never been in any other one, and it is so freaking cool. It's basically an Elder Lich, and I am very, very in love with its design, because it's basically wearing a skin suit. I really, really like that. I like its fight too, because it doesn't feel difficult. It just feels, but by the time you get to it, you've already fought Nergigante, you've already probably fought Kushala, you've probably already fought Teostra. If you can handle those two, you can handle this guy. The only thing I really don't like about it is that if you're not bringing full miasma resistance, you need to bring a full stack of nullberries, because he will inflict effluvium on you very often. Kulif Taroth. I'm not the biggest fan of her hunt, I'm gonna be honest. It's one of the only two sieges in the game, but unlike the other one, there's this you don't have to kill her, you have to just break her horns. The problem is, I don't really like focusing down on one specific part of the monster, and while Kulif is friggin' huge, so hitting the head isn't a problem, well, hitting the head isn't a problem in theory, it can be a bit difficult in practice. And Master Rank is straight up painful. I'm not the biggest fan of this hunt. I'd much rather do the other siege. That one I quite like. Xeno'jiiva, the final boss, and oh dear lord, I wish you were harder. So many things you could have done. That being said, I do understand why it's easier. I mean, you're fighting an infant. That's what this is. It literally hatched like 5 minutes before you fight it. I love its design. I love how it's, when you kill it, all the light drains from it. And when it enters rage mode, its core glows really red. I definitely wish the fight was harder though. If it was harder, it would be a lot more fun. And one thing I've actually discovered is that you can't flinch shot Xeno'jiiva. Even if it's in rage mode. Yeah, you can't flinch shot Xeno'jiiva at all. Beotodus, the first monster of Iceborne and last Piscine Wyvern. Not a fan of it, I'm gonna be honest. And while I don't actively despise it, it's just forgettable. Like, yeah, it's a fish that travels in snow. Cool. So what? Lavasioth goes through lava. I think that's infinitely cooler. Pun not intended. Banbaro, Iceborne's meme lord. Oh, I love you so much. I love its design, I love its fight, and I love how it's an evasion monster, so it will occasionally just run in through with a random object shoved between its horns, and just run face first into whatever monster you're fighting. Whenever that happens, I have to take a moment to just appreciate that Banbaro loves you that much. One of the more enjoyable fights in the Hoarfrost Reach. Viper, Tobi Kadachi. Oh boy, if you thought base Tobi was hard, Viper's gonna kick your teeth in. It's basically base Tobi, but with a much brighter color scheme, that I love, by the way, and poison. And it can just go into the air whenever it wants. Yeah. Nightshade Palamulu, same problem as Kushala Daora. That feels less like you're fighting the monster and more like it's waiting out the clock in order to win by default. Only whereas Kushala's winds damage you and make it hard to reach, Nightshade Palamulu has sleep, making it hard to reach. However, sleep resistance isn't that hard to gem in if you do a little bit of farming and get lucky. I didn't bother with it personally, I just had to suck it up and dodge, but wasn't that big of a problem. It can definitely be a problem for some other people though, and that's why I'm not the biggest fan of it. Koro Puke Puke. Base Puke Puke, but with water, and a lot more difficult for it. I quite like that it occasionally just decides, you know what, I'm hungry. Walks away, eats some random berries, and then just immediately starts shooting condensed water at you. Like, I quite like that. It just randomly walks away, eats, blasts water, repeat. It's quite an interesting lifestyle, one I would consider living. If I was this thing. Barioth. Oh, where do I begin? Fight, amazing. Design, Sabertooth Wyvern. That is just cool. In terms of difficulty, I struggled a bit when I first fought it with a lot of other monsters in Iceborne, and it was one of the more fun struggles I had because every time I fought it, I felt like I was learning. It's like what difficulty should be in this game: trial and error. You shouldn't expect to be a first try, but you should just expect to get better and better at the hunt until eventually you win, and I really like that. Nargacuga. I love him, though not as much as some others, because of the, I want to say, flagships, I feel like Nargacuga is probably one of the more forgettable ones, just because its design is great, and I love its fight. I love how its armor basically turns you into a ninja. But honestly, fight's kind of easy. Like, coming off Barioth, I didn't struggle with Narg at all on my first playthrough. Yeah, it's not bad. I quite like its design, and I will love its music, but honestly, just kind of forgettable for me. Glavenus, immediately solving Nargacuga's forgettability problem by being a dinosaur with a fucking sword for a tail. Like, goddamn. There is credibility to the theory that Capcom hires children to design monsters, because this is something only a child with a very active imagination would make, and it's really good all for it. I love how, and I especially love that little detail. Whenever the tail hits the ground and it's on fire, it leaves behind skip marks and residue flames, and I really like that detail. The fight's fast-paced, and I quite like its music. One of my favorites, though I will admit, kind of worn off on me. I'm not the biggest fan of it anymore, but I love it all the same. Tigrex, oh fucking boy. I think I've made my opinion on Tigrex very clear at this point. I'm not the biggest fan of it, and the reason, and I will admit, I was a bit too pissed off to really articulate why I didn't like it very much. Allow me to explain. Tigrex, I think, goes against the game's core design philosophy. Because as anyone who has played Iceborne can tell you, the Clutch Claw is insanely important for getting extra damage and breaking parts faster. Tigrex only has like 3 moves: a 360 spin, a bite, and a long ass charge. If you're on the tail, if you're on any part of it while during the 360 charge, you get knocked off, as usual. If you're on the wings or the head while it's doing its long ass charge, you get knocked off. And if it does the bite while you're on the head or wings, you get knocked off. The easiest thing to knock off is the tail, i.e. the hardest part of the monster, because Tigrex always faces you. Oh yeah, the boulders. Fuck that attack. It spams it to no end as well. I'm not the biggest fan of it. You have to either go for risky wounds with the Temporal Mantle, thus wasting your Temporal Mantle, in order to get some wounds off, or wait and try and tire it out, running out the clock again, or you suck it up, deal with the fact you have to deal less body part damage, and just fight it without the Clutch Claw. It is so annoying to face that it can't really be put into words. I'm certain some people like it, and it's a flagship, so bonus points for being memorable in that way, I guess. But, God, I hate it so much. Brachiosaurus immediately solving Tigrex's problem of being annoying as fuck by being fun as fuck. If Nergigante was Mike Tyson, then Brachiosaurus is actual Mike Tyson, but with slime. And I really like that. It's the only monster in the game that inflicts Blast Scourge along with its counterpart. And it's easily one of the most enjoyable fights mid-Iceborne. Mid-Iceborne for me. One thing I really like, one striking detail about for me though, its introduction cutscene, when it takes down Uragaan, before it starts fighting you, it looks like he's being a bartender and Uragaan's his bar. You will never be able to look at that cutscene the same way again. It's just looking at you like, hey Hunter, what can I get you? We got a lot of drinks over here. Like, I really love that. It's just funny to me. Shrieking Legiana. Base Legiana, but harder and a lot more fun for it. I do kind of wish, though, that its design was in-game and look at Shrieking Legiana has a little bit more ice on it and is a little bit darker. I definitely do wish it was more striking in design, but in terms of fight, is really fun, and probably the monster you will be fighting a lot if you want to be prepared for Velkhana. Fulgur Anjanath. Base Anjanath, if he used electricity, weaponized his snot, was an invasion monster. It's not bad, but it's not particularly memorable for me. I always end up forgetting he exists until I end up seeing him again. I'm like, oh, hey Fulgur, nice to see you again. Completely forgot you existed. Not a lot to say about that, I'm gonna be honest. Acidic Glavenus. Oh boy. If people called base Glavenus a weeb, Acidic Glavenus takes that up to 11. His sword tail is a straight up katana, and his cutscene literally has him anime slashing a Great Gyros. It should be cut in half, but it isn't because this game is an R18. If it was R18, that Great Gyros would be cut in half. That is just a fact. In terms of fight, it trades in fire damage for knocking your defense down and being slightly more aggressive with its tail. It's Ebony Odogaron, or Odogaron if you're a moron. Yeah. Another invasion monster that Iceborne has a serious love for some fucking reason. And, not a lot to say about it. It's basically base Odogaron, but harder and with dragon element. I quite like that. However, one detail I like about it is that it doesn't actually generate the dragon element itself. It stores dragon element in meat. Well, it does generate, but it can't use it. It's basically takes some meat, puts dragon energy in it, and shoots it off like a rocket. Like, that is just a really interesting detail to me, and I really like it. Velkhana, the flagship of Iceborne. Oh dear lord, you're hard. Velkhana, when I first fought it, I actually ran out of time on the first hunt I fought it because I did not prepare for it at all. But now though, I can solo it no problem. It really goes to show that this is definitely sort of a difficulty check monster. You either get past Velkhana or you're not getting past anything after it. It's a lot of fun. Definitely. However, that being said, you absolutely need max ice res for this because otherwise, you are going to be in for a world of hurt. Sieving Bazelgeuse, trading in base Bazelgeuse's invasion monster status for only appearing in the Elder's Recess, but having a bomber. Sieving Bazelgeuse is a B-52 carbon bomber with nuclear weaponry. I especially love its supernova attack, where it just launches a massive barrage of skulls in a circle pattern around it, and then just dives headfirst into all of them, creating a massive area of effect explosion, and creating one of the best roars in the game. I love it. Black Veil Valhazak. If there was a monster that will make you scared, this is it. Its ecology cutscene is so good in all of the best ways. In terms of fight, though, I mean, it's not bad, but it can be really it can be rather annoying. Because, unlike a lot of the other Elder Dragons, it has a supernova that basically renders an area around it immovable without taking damage. And it hurts on top of Effluvium as well. It's hard, but at the same time, it's something you can learn. Namielle. Oh wow, I love this monster, but it can definitely be a bit forgettable at times. It definitely has bonus points though for being one of the only 3 monsters in the entire game to actually make use of the water element, and of the 3, Namielle does the best. That being it, and I especially love, however, that it also uses lightning on top of that. You wouldn't think the two would mix, but with Namielle, the fight it mixes them very well together, generating war on the ground and then using electricity to create steam explosions. One detail I like is that as you're dealing damage to it and it's losing water, its coat loses vibrancy until it gets more water. I really like that detail, but I really wish that the armor was a little bit better. Because just better better slots and stuff. Because you have no real reason to farm Namiel for the armor unless it's Arc Tempered Namiel, and even then, better armor sets exist. Savage Deviljho. If that base Deviljho was hard, Savage is even harder. Being basically permanently in rage mode and using the dragon element even more. Savage is really hard and honestly kind of disheartening to see because it is basically operating on nothing anymore. It's not even, and while it just kills for the sake of it now, and that is really saddening to me. Ruiner Nurg. I love this guy. Fast-paced fight, amazing design, great music, same. But it's based Ruiner Nurg. It's based Nurg, but with bleeding, and is a lot more difficult. That being said, why in the sweet mother of fuck do you have to get to MR100 to fight him? Like, that is so stupid. By the time you beat the base, by the time you beat Iceborne, you will be at MR24. You have to get to MR100, 76 levels more. It is so dumb. But once you get there, I consider the fight worth it. Shara Ishvalda. Xeno'jiiva, but actually difficult. And with a Buddhist theme to it. I really like this monster. Definitely wish, however, that it's used its Sonic Beam a little bit less, because it uses that a ton. And the eye detail? Ugh. Really good. Zinogre, the best monster in this fucking game, and if you say otherwise, I will fight you. Oh boy! Amazing design, amazing battle theme, and its ecology cutscene is straight up has a walk in between the Diablos and Rathalos fight. Look at you, say, I'm gonna deal with you later, don't you worry, let me deal with these idiots first. Turns to those two and basically says, get the fuck off my property. And fight? Oh, I love it so much. Just mwah. If there's one complaint about that, I have two complaints about it. One, it reuses Nergagante's death scream for some reason, and two, its roar in-game is kinda pathetic. Like, it's just a traditional wolf roar with a little bit of electric, with like a little bit of an electric theming to it. Its older roars were so much better. If it had New World Fight, Old World Roars, I would have loved that. But as it stands now, still amazing. Yian Garuga. I was concerned about this, I'm gonna be honest. Oh boy. Doing this without a drink was a terrible decision, but I'm gonna keep going. I was concerned about the Yian Garuga fight because I've heard horror stories about it. It was infuriating to fight in the older games, but in World, it's basically Rathian if it was a bird wyvern, was faster, had machine gun fire, and roared a bit more. It's not difficult, and it's actually really fun, especially its music. I'm a bit concerned, bit weirded out by the roar, though. Like, it's called, like, Lone Wolf or something like that, and this isn't a wolf. This is a bird. Yeah, it's really strange. Immediately onto Scarred Yian Garuga. I sincerely wish the idea behind this was used more often. You will never see a regular tempered Yian Garuga. All tempered Yian Garuga are scarred Yian Garuga. I love that concept. I really wish that tempered monsters had this idea more often, where it's basically tempered monsters are harder versions of regular monsters. Why not make them battle scarred? Like, that's just an amazing idea, and it's really annoying that it's only ever used on Yian Garuga. In terms of fight, base Yian Garuga, but with even more machine gun fire. Yeah. Well, and it hits harder, but it's to be expected. It's a tempered monster. Brute Tigrex. Oh, were you expecting me to go into a massive rant about how it's Tigrex but worse? No. I am going to do something completely unexpected and say it's Tigrex, but actually fun. The main problem with Tigrex is, like, as I said, it spammed its charge and boulder attacks constantly, and if you try to do anything else, and if you try to make use of the window after those attacks, it just did a 360 spin or bite and knocked you off immediately. Brute Tigrex trades in that for spamming roar attacks. Short range roar attacks. Roar attacks that, if you are basically giving it a hug, you can avoid. It went on a long charge like a whole one time when I fought it. It's really good. Like, this is Tigrex but fun and well designed. Why isn't regular Tigrex like this? I went into it expecting to be, alright, it's gonna be Tigrex, it's gonna be shit, bring it on, let me get this over and done with. But no. I actually respect this monster. It is a lot more fun than I was expecting. And it shows up base Tigrex a lot. Gold Rathian, the final of the 3 Rath variants, and arguably the most enjoyable. Does a lot of damage, uses its tail a lot, but it has such a good level, such a level of style to it. It is just amazing to watch. Like, it just straight up does aerial tricks whenever it uses its tail, and I love that. Silver Rathalos, the final of the 3 Rath variants, and sort of like Gold Rathian to me in that it's arguably the most enjoyable of the 3 variants. It does a lot of damage. Its breath attacks are amazing to look at. And its armor, not the best, but definitely some of the best looking. It's why I have part of it as my layered armor. Rajang! Oh! Ricardo Milos with Super Saiyan energy. That's all I'm going to say. I frigging love this guy. This was definitely a sort of vibe check monster for me, where I went into it not expecting much, but because I'd never heard about Rajang ever, like, at all. And when I fought it, I was legit scared the first time around. Like, that hunt you saw on camera was the first time I ever fought it, and it was amazing to watch. Any complaints about it? Not really. I mean, it could. I don't know. In terms of, like, fight, you definitely have to spend a lot more time practicing Rajang, but once you practice it, it's not that difficult to just identify what it's going to do and when. I guess some of its attacks could have a bit more wind up, I guess, so you could have a bit more, so it could be a bit more lenient, but other than that, don't really have any problems with it. Stygian Zinogre. A better Zinogre, honestly. Same problems as before, uses Nurg's Death Screech, has a bit of a disappointing roar, but it's a lot more difficult and a lot more enjoyable for it. I do wish, however, that it had a little bit more relevancy. The only reason you have to fight Stygian Zinogre is in order to unlock the Frost region for the Guiding Lands and to get the final level final slot augmentation for a weapon. That's basically it. Safi'jiiva. Oh man, this fight is hard. Love its design, love its battle music, love its supernova attack. But it's a siege. The sieges are repetitive as hell, and they're not a lot of fun, honestly. They're not bad, but if you want to be well prepared for anything, you have to fight these guys. But one thing I like about it, its armor skill damages you, but in return heals you if you manage to hit it. And because of that, you're able to use it to farm for fortify buffs, and I quite like that. It's not my kind of armor, but it's quite good. Furious Rajang. If there was a way, if I was to describe this thing in one word, it would be fear. Rajang already scared me. Furious does that even more. But that being said, definitely the more enjoyable of the variants. I don't fight very often because, like I said, it's hard as hell. But I really like it. I especially love its rage mode. I'm surprised it doesn't have any supernovas. Like, its large, like, area of effects slam attack, I guess, could count, but that's really it. Raging Brachydios. Holy hell. This thing is insane. Like, it's base Brachydios, but darker, larger, more yellowish. Its slime is a lot more dangerous, and getting max blast resistance is basically a necessity. And that final phase, wow. They spoiled this thing so... Capcom spoiled Raging Brachydios so much with this, and I love it. Frostfang Barioth. Base Barioth, but harder and with more ice, and looks a lot cuter, actually. Yeah, I find Frostfang Barioth unironically kind of cute. If there's one problem I have with it, though, there's not a lot of reason to fight this. You fight this to get the ice weapon in order to stand a chance against Alatreon, and that's basically it. And the icy patches and the ice patches it leaves behind freeze you in place, leaving you open. And considering you fight this guy in an area that is literally all white, it is really hard to see him at points. Still pretty fun though, just not a lot of reason to fight it. Alatreon. Oh boy. Let's start with the good parts. Design? One of the best in the game. Color scheme? I love how the arena changes as it changes forms. And... But Roar, one of the best. Really makes you feel like it's one of the... Really makes you feel like you're in danger. And battle music, that build-up, it takes a bit of a while, but when it gets going very well. Fight, though. Ugh. I'm gonna be upfront. I don't think Alatreon's fight is that great. I'm not gonna be one of those morons on the forums. Shut the fuck up, alarm clock. I'm not gonna be one of those morons on the forums being like, this thing shouldn't be hard. It is a black dragon. These things are capable of wiping out civilizations by sneezing. They should be hard, but... Oh my god. The main difficulty that comes from Alatreon's fight isn't something you can learn. It's a DPS check. Why? Not just a DPS check, an elemental DPS check. Part of what makes Monster Hunter so fun is that you can use any weapon, any element, any armor, and still succeed. But with Alatreon, you're not using an element of one of two very specific elements. You're not going to win. You don't use gear to increase your attack. the attack you do with that element, you're not going to win. Hell, if you're not using some kind of one specific type of weapon, you're not going to win. It's stupid. Because if it didn't have Eschaton Judgment, and if Eschaton Judgment wasn't a bullshit DPS check, the fight would be a lot more fun. But because it's a DPS check, it can wipe out your entire party instantly. It's not a lot of fun losing because you didn't do enough damage, even when you feel like you should. And if you want to not deal with Eschaton Judgment, you have to break the horns. Not an easy thing to do considering what comes out of that end of Alatreon. You try and grab the horns while it does thunder attacks, you get knocked off instantly. And if you're using Temporal, say goodbye to your Temporal Mantle. It's not a lot of fun, and if it didn't have Eschaton, it would be so much more enjoyable. I love everything else about it though, but its fight definitely knocks it for me. Fatalis. Oh man. This is what I wished Alatreon was. Hard, but learnable. Fatalis' attacks look daunting at first, and it hit like goddamn freight trains each. And while there are some instances where I feel like they are absolutely horseshit, every single one of Fatalis' attacks can either be dodged or blocked. It's only a matter of practice before you're able to succeed. I do have two problems with it though. One, why they felt the need to make the first part of it a solo exclusive. Like, yeah, you have to beat defeat Fatalis to get the Fatalis cutscene by yourself. Why? Like, that's just bullshit. And second part, siege weapons. The cannons, the ballista, the roaming ballista, and the Dragonair. They make this fight take so much less effort, it's kinda sad. And more to the point, the roaming ballista especially is just overpowered. The amount of damage it does to its chest and head are laughable. That being said, easily one of the best fights in the game, and definitely worthy of being the thing to end Iceborne on. Yeah. That was my opinion of every monster in this game, not counting Leshen and Behemoth, because those two can fuck right off. If you enjoyed, my time with this game isn't over. I intend on playing it still, helping people complete missions, so on and so forth. But I won't be streaming this game anymore. Yeah. Goodbye, Iceborne. And when a new game comes out, I will certainly be rising to the challenge.